I have been longing to work on Julius Caesar for years now. I actually worked on a short cutting of it for the school tour at OSF years ago, I think right around the time when I did Love's Labor's Lost here, right before that maybe. And I was just captivated by how exquisitely it's built. The storytelling is extraordinary, and we of course we expect that from Shakespeare, but we also know that some of the plays are a little messier and more sprawling than others, and Caesar is one of the greatest stories ever told, regardless of who's telling it, Plutarch or Shakespeare. And then Shakespeare has structurally just done an exquisite job of taking us through this fantastic story and then actually allowing it to unravel into a little bit more of a sprawling epic. One might say mess at the end when the Civil War breaks out, but one of the things I've been really excited about in terms of exploring the play is how to lean into the rigors of the text, the strength of storytelling about the society in the midst of a major power struggle and debate about the effectiveness and necessity of violence or not in moving forward, and then how that struggle erupts into something that is far less able to be contained by text, that is much more sprawling, that is a civil war and all that that entails, and the opportunity that Shakespeare gives us is how do you tell that story dramatically? How do you tell that story theatrically? And so I think we get the best of both worlds. With Caesar, you get some of the most brilliant text in the Western canon, and you also get some of the most challenging, epic, theatrical challenges in how to express a civil war and the cost of a civil war on stage. I was so excited when I heard that Caesar was going to be a part of the 2017 season because of where it was going to be falling on the heels of this national election cycle. And so I really lobbied Bill for this particular play because I felt like the relevancy and necessity to tell the story felt like it was going to be more vital than ever. We start rehearsals, what will be right before the inauguration of new leadership. We'll be right in the moment in this country that Caesar's Rome is in, of a transition from the old to the new, and determining how, as a society, we're going to care for that transition and lead that transition and hopefully enable that transition to be a healthy one. But, I think as we all feel in this sort of crazy election cycle, we don't know right now where that's going to land. And I think the country feels in an incredible state of unrest and disease right now, quite similar to Caesar's Rome. And, I think there's a real debate in the current election cycle of the difference between a passion for leadership and a passion for power. And the question of what is driving those goals, and is it ego, is it a desire for control, or is it a true vision for what is good for a country or a republic? And I think in some ways the very fine line that separates those two. And I think Caesar really explores that, because you have the protagonist of Brutus, who really is, I think, at heart an authentic, honorable man and has the potential to be a great leader, but because he makes the choice to use violence to make change, essentially he just keeps perpetuating the cycle of violence, and which leaves no room for real leadership, I think, is in a way one of the great lessons of the play. Recently I was watching this video that's been floating around in light of recent events, from this woman in the CIA who was undercover for years and in the Middle East. And she said one of the things that she learned from that time is that everyone always thinks they're the good guy. At the center of the play, you have a protagonist like Brutus, who is deeply honest, conscientious, intelligent, and absolutely is passionate about the good of Rome. That said, a lot of what we hear from Caesar is the same thing, and so you have, even within this one country, antithetical or opposing political figures who both are saying they are fighting for the good of the Republic. And I think probably anyone who is, fighting for power in their own mind is fighting for change and is fighting for the next generation and their children and, all of the things that are important in terms of allowing the world to grow in a healthy and visionary way. However, when the tool that you use to fight that good fight is violence and not, change in policy and true deep listening of the other side and understanding of your opponent, but actually just violence to destroy your opponent, then it only facilitates more violence. It actually never facilitates change. And I think that's one of the other big lessons of the play, and sadly the lesson that we keep seeing, played out around the world again and again. I think one of the reasons why I felt so strongly about doing this production, particularly right now, is I think there's a really important conversation in it about the cost of violence. The cost civically, physically, emotionally, psychologically to us as a human race by perpetuating this violence. And, this production is in the long-running Shakespeare slot, which means we have the enormous opportunity of reaching thousands of students. I don't know the exact number, but I know that it's significant and that the impact, therefore, can be significant. And I feel a huge responsibility, I think, in this production to tee up a conversation about violence, about the cycle that persists in our culture, about the responsibility that we all have to make choices that don't continue that cycle of violence, and the temptation we will always be faced with to meet the world's challenges and the tyranny of the world with violence as a solution. And I think the conversations that can be had with students coming to see this show, both before and after, about what the powerful pull of that is in our culture, that actually it's a very real thing, that we seem to have this ancestral call as a human race to use violence as a way forward, and the question of what we can do and what is our responsibility and what is their responsibility as the next generation to make different choices. And, I think Shakespeare does something really interesting in this play in terms of generations. It's one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about as we're talking about casting. You have the older generations in the play of leadership in the army and also leadership in the community in terms of Caesar, both a military and a civic leader. You have the current generation that is making their own choices about the future of the country in the form of Brutus and Cassius, and then you have the next generation of leadership in Octavius Caesar, who shows up halfway through the play, who is the younger generation and makes the very clear choice to continue the cycle of violence. And then at the same time, you have these exquisite characters like Lucius, a young boy who in a way is the embodiment of innocence and the more innocent side of Brutus's imagination and psychology. And I think we see in him the potential for a different set of choices. And I think I, as a new parent, have just been feeling a different sense of responsibility to tell the story of violence in a visceral way and in a way that demands that we have a conversation about how we solve this very real issue that we have as a culture. And also, again, I think as a parent, it's just become suddenly abundantly clear how we do really have this horrific inheritance of violence that we seem insistent on passing down from generation to generation, and that's exactly what is set up in Julius Caesar in terms of how the characters are structured generationally. And so I hope that the play in a way can be a call to action to all of us, but particularly the students, to make powerful choices as they decide what kind of future world they want to build.